discovery and invention in science can be an individual affair. Innovation is necessarily slides we're looking at the details of each of the agriculture, industry, health, and IKS area. It shows what our targets are and what some of our successes are. In agriculture, I'll just pick out a couple. We have trained 9,053 community members. We have 1,091 training courses that have been offered in the last 3 years. We've supported 35 postgraduates, et cetera, a whole range of various indicators. In health, for every R1 that government has contributed to health innovation, we have leveraged R2 in external funding. This has been particularly successful. And in the agriculture, the same is happening. We have tripled our resources by partnering with industry. In health, we have partnered with both philanthropic foundations and private sector funding. With indigenous knowledge, this is very largely still being driven only by government funding at this stage. It's still early, but since 2012, we have supported 52 IKS projects, which has included 19 cooperatives. We have established 31 SMMEs, 94 products, 40 commercial licenses. So in other words, products are getting into the market already, and we've created well over 150 jobs. In industry, we have a range of different interventions: bioproducts, bio-based chemicals, bio-based materials, bioenergy, and then environmental biotechnologies. I was just going to show a range of companies that have spun out of this industrial bioeconomy thematic area, including Cape Bio, which is now producing COVID-19 PCR reagents, and AgriProtein, which is producing fertilizer from fly waste. Just two examples, there are many more. So how do we get there? Well, our Technology Innovation Agency is a key partner, and the slide that I would be showing now shows that the various support and the people that are recipients. The youth supported is increasing to 1,500 in the last year, with a number of internships that are in the range of about 600 in the year. And South Africa, with the history of apartheid, we are still placing a strong emphasis on transformation so that Black people can be empowered to participate economically, and we track that, and over 1,500 previously disadvantaged individuals have participated in tier initiatives. The new jobs created under the bioeconomy is broken down into technology platform jobs, into technology cluster program jobs, and to the Agricultural Bioinnovation Partnership Program. And we have well over 50 jobs that are created through TIER. A dated statistic that I was going to indicate is that by 2014, the top 7 South African biotech companies that TIER had supported had a combined annual turnover of nearly 1 billion rand. You divide that by 15, 16 to get to the US dollar. So this turnover of 1 billion came from a direct investment of only 63 million. So in other words, the return on investment is significant. However, we invested far more than 63 million in a whole range of other projects, many of which were not successful. My second last slide then. So what do the metrics show for the job creation and the economy in South Africa? Well, we've recently done an exercise, and for 2020, we are attributing approximately 8% of GDP is due to the bioeconomy. So 8% is a significant portion. It's measurable. We note that agriculture itself ranges between 2 and 4% of GDP. So 8% then is significantly more than just the agricultural component. Of that 8%, the circular economy, which focuses on renewable resources, is only 2% at this stage. We would want to be increasing that 2% to roughly the same proportion of the bioeconomy to make the circular economy more effective as well. Further statistics, we are employing approximately 1.6 million people in South Africa in the bioeconomy. Of those, 113,000 are skilled and 524,000 are semi-skilled, and the remaining are either low-skilled or in the informal sector. In 2018, we trained 1,051 doctoral degrees, PhDs, in natural and agricultural sciences, and this is directly contributing to skilled youth. In terms of sales, South African bioeconomy recorded 700 billion in bioeconomy sales, of which 280 billion was in exports. And the final point to note there is that there is an increasing unit value of our exports. In other words, the technological sophistication of South African bioeconomy products is increasing. So the bioeconomy strategy is leading to a higher value being derived from our natural resources. So some concluding comments in developing a bioeconomy and looking at its support for jobs and youth. The first one is it's a long process. Do not be fooled into thinking supporting a bioeconomy now leads to a better job and a better life for all tomorrow. This takes a long process, and government has a critical role, but it's not only government. It must be a national and a regional effort, and something that the East African community is doing far better than we are in Southern Africa is the regional coordination. That is something that's impressive for you guys. The second point is innovation is but crucial input to the bioeconomy. So you recognize then that innovation must be spread across the bioeconomy. It's not a single department such as my Department of Science and Innovation. It needs to include the departments of agriculture, of health, of environmental affairs, etc., etc. It's not just a single department driving it. It's got to be a government-wide effort. And as I've said before, it's got to be a regional and a global effort as well. Third point is it needs to be a systems approach. It is very complex, and there are very many different elements such as value chains and skills, equipment, infrastructure, innovation support, industry regulation, the market, etc., that make this a highly complex effort. The fourth point is it's a team effort. As I said, one person cannot take a good idea all the way to the market. You need help, you need expertise, you need guidance, and it needs to be recognized that you need to partner in order to be innovatively successful. Fifth point, there are multiple benefits, and these benefits are not just what you are planning for. There are far more benefits. So the jobs may be an obvious objective, but there's also you're developing renewable resources, you're developing sustainability, you're reducing your carbon footprint, you're increasing the value of science as a growth stimulator. You are sharing credit across different departments, across society. Then the sixth point is this allows countries to take advantage of the indigenous knowledge that is a wealth in Africa. So this is really a very strong point. There is a huge opportunity for indigenous knowledge in Africa, And South Africa is just beginning to realize this and take advantage of it and create industry around this indigenous knowledge that we have. The last point really then is Africa is biomass rich. We have remarkable natural resources, and surely this must be the basis for a bioeconomy and a potential departure point for bilateral and multilateral relationships. I then end off by saying that I really support this conference that the organized have arranged, but noting that there are other efforts. There's the Global Bioeconomy Summit organized by Germany that Joachim von Braun participated in yesterday. There's also the BioAfrica Convention that is held here in South Africa, but we will be starting to move this to other countries around Africa. And the bottom line is we need to be talking, we need to be sharing experiences, and we need to be working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was a very insightful and very fast-tracked overview of what's happening in South Africa, how you got to where you are, and the most important things that you would leave as recommendations for the rest of the continent. As a leader in the space, I think it's very important. I captured a number of takeaway points. That one, bioeconomy is actually very, in terms of what it means to the different countries, should be very country, region specific. Our translation of the concept it's very broad all over, but we all need to sort of customize it to what it means to us so that it brings value. Innovation is a social process. It's not a one-man show. We've got to really work as a collective. I recognize the value of the partnerships and in coordination. You say that it's probably not working as well in South Africa as it is in East Africa. However, you do have very strong partners, and I know they're doing a lot of work. I've seen the work of Tia, and you can see a good demonstration is what you just shared with us, the contribution of these biotech companies, that they were able to really give you a real return on investments. The concluding points I think were very useful. I won't go into the details of that. There's a question in the chat, and I'll just ask that question, if you don't mind, if you speak to it very quickly. And if there's any other question, just for clarification, Ben is still with us, so we will open up after the panelists have talked, and we can have further questions there. The question is, Ben, that, oh, lost it. Are there any key elements in the bioeconomy strategy that other African countries have learned from? And I think these are in addition to what you've just presented, particularly in the agriculture, just lessons from agriculture that we can share, that you can share with us.
There are many lessons, and bottom line is we need to be talking, we need to be sharing. I think that the key issue for us in South Africa is that the market for agriculture is very different than the market for health products, for industrial products. The farmer is a key kind of milestone in the agricultural product development process. The farmer, he or she may not be the final market, that's the consumer, but you have to be able to work with farmers in order to get products to market. So what we've learned in South Africa is that an academic project developing a wonderful new agricultural product will have absolutely no chance of success unless farmers are involved, unless farmers are guiding the project, can tell you what they like, what they don't like, what needs further work, because the farmer, him or herself, is a key gateway to the market. So one of the big lessons we've learned is that academic projects in agriculture are unsuccessful unless you are connecting all the dots, including the farmer as a key stakeholder. There are many further lessons, but probably that's the most important one.
Thank you very much. There are two other questions, but I'll come back to those once we've heard a little bit from our panelists this morning. So we'll kick off our panels with And the concept of the way we roll out the panel is the panel members come from very different parts of the bioeconomy and different countries. And so what we're asking them is to focus on 3 questions. Really, what does employment or job creation prospects do? Does the sustainable economy offer? Second question is, how can youth, women, and other groups be effectively involved in sustainable bioeconomy development? And the third question is, what kind of policy incentives are necessary to ensure an inclusive, sustainable bioeconomy? So the panelists will, depending on their mandate and their expertise, will offer their perspective on either all 3 or any one of these questions. And for each panelist, you have 5 minutes. So just to make sure that everybody has a chance to say something, please try and stick your thoughts and opinions to the 5 minutes. We'll start with Paulus. Paulus, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear, Paulus. Go.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, please allow me to follow yesterday and today's speakers of congratulating the East African region for the launch of the regional bioeconomy strategy. And I believe that this is a good example to the rest of Africa. Before I start, I just want to highlight that youth unemployment dominated mostly by females. It's high in Namibia with 46%. And this is mostly, you find youth unemployment in rural areas as compared to urban areas. And agriculture, forest, and fishing sector, which are the main contributor to the Namibian economy, just behind the mining sector, only employ 15% of youth. The National Commission on Research, Science and Technology, where I'm coming from, is a leading agency under the Minister of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation, facilitating the development of sustainable bioeconomy in Namibia. But being engaging with different stakeholders during the development process, we have realized that bioeconomy has the potential to solve a number of social challenges in Namibia, as it cut across many sectors which fall under national development priorities. Because our 5th National Development Plan, poverty reduction and increased health are among the key basic enablers. Similar, agriculture, environment, and manufacturing are key economic priority areas. Namibia will only be able to realize above is optimize the use of emerging technologies in health, agriculture, and manufacturing industry. And Namibia currently has the draft National Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy and the Indigenous Knowledge System draft policy. And this policy will be pillars toward the realization or as an open ground for the development of the bioeconomy strategy, which covers 3 interrelated clusters: science policy, technology policy, and innovation policy. The aspiration objectives of the draft bioeconomy, which will still be required further stakeholder input, include develop and maintain research and development infrastructures that foster bio-innovation and drives competitiveness research. We realize that in Namibia, for example, different infrastructures, they are still lacking, especially in the bio-innovation sector. And we foresee that during the implementation, this is the key priority areas, and the development of the critical mass of high competent bioengineers, bioentrepreneurs that can be deployed and efficiently be utilized in bio-related industry. For example, there are a lot of undergraduates or even school leavers that are still want to take up entrepreneurship programs. However, platforms are lacking, and we thought that this strategy, because still in the development process, will be able to cater for that. And also promote innovation arising from the development and application of biotechnology by strengthening collaboration with strategic partners. We realize that I think collaboration is a key, and we've seen that this is an example that is coming from East Africa already, and it will help countries in working together in addressing various societal challenges, especially in the bioeconomy sphere, and also promote understanding of bioeconomy in Namibia. We have different platforms. However, we see that these platforms are centralized, for example, in cities. But you've seen that there are many upcoming entrepreneurs that are, for example, within different sectors in rural areas, but advocacy and awareness are still lacking. However, various groups, both unemployed graduates and in rural communities. But then we realized that support bio-innovation and bio-entrepreneurship through the alignment and streamlining of resources. For example, an agent needs to accelerate investment for financial services and related incentives aimed at empowering youth bio-entrepreneurs operating along the agriculture supply chain. And sustainable bioeconomy strategy must be an enabling framework that provides platform for mentorship programs, because this is still, although you still find pockets here and there, we still need to vigorously encourage this to happen. And also train so that bio-entrepreneurs could harness their innovation potentials and take advantage of bioeconomy associated technology, as this will enable youth bio-entrepreneurs to strive in business. Maybe before I continue, I just want to say that just 2 days ago, AgriBank, which is one of the development banks in Namibia, launched the Women and Youth Loan Scheme with a relaxed condition to encourage participation in enhancing financial inclusion, economic empowerment, and employment creation. We thought that this is one of the initiatives and contributing to bioeconomy development, especially for our bio-entrepreneurs or whoever who want to access funding, but without collaterals and all other those stringent requirements. And again, we have different platforms, for example, FemBioBiz, which is a SADC initiative supported by Finnish. And the program was launched in 2017 to develop leadership and entrepreneurial skill in female-owned biobusiness within the SADC region. But apart from this small initiative, we thought vigorous initiative can come up, but through having a bio-innovation strategy. In my final remark, I thought that Namibia can contribute in towards honoring the Agenda 2063 aspiration of youth employment, which Africa want to eliminate by 2050, and the Malabo Declaration. Madam Chair, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paulus, for that very insightful overview of what's happening in Namibia and the initiatives that you're doing there. We'll move very quickly to the next speaker, and this is Dr. Anne from the FAO. Dr. Anne, it's over to you now.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting FAO to this very exciting and interesting conference. I joined the sessions yesterday, and I've said I learned a lot, and I met a lot of interesting people. So thank you very much for inviting us to this conference. As we just heard it from the previous speakers, and as the title of this session says, bioeconomy can and actually shall support job creation and economic growth and address the needs of youth and women in Africa. Ben expressed it very clearly. He said, we need to show impact. Bioeconomy is more than bioinnovations, it's more than biotechnology, it's a systemic approach. And unless we can show the positive impact moving towards a sustainable economy, moving towards the SDGs, we are missing really big opportunities. So why is this important from a food and agriculture perspective? Yesterday I was joining the session for food systems and agriculture, and it became very, very clear there as well that actually food and agriculture represent the biggest chunk of bioeconomy in Eastern Africa, but in most part of the world actually. And this part of the bioeconomy is really central for job creation and economic growth. It's central for involving women and youth who play a key role in these sectors. We also heard it yesterday at the ministerial panel from Professor Jerome, Special Advisor to the African Union, that the bioeconomy represents many opportunities to transform food systems in a sustainable way, and again, create jobs and contribute to economic growth. And this is urgently needed now more than ever. You know that the number of undernourished people in the world has increased in recent years again. More than 820 million people, which is 1 in every 9 persons in the world, suffered from hunger in 2019, and 3 billion people worldwide do not have access to a healthy diet. I'm stressing this here because malnutrition is not just undernourishment, it's also obesity and non-communicable diet-related chronic diseases such as cancer or heart disease. And we see malnutrition and these diseases rising in parallel, often at the same time as undernourishment. Ms. Sophie Nansareko from Makerere University in Uganda touched upon this in a very interesting presentation yesterday at the food system workshop. Let me give you another statistic here. At the same time, food loss and waste remains a key issue everywhere in the world. About a third of all food produced globally is lost or goes to waste. Huge lost opportunity here. And then now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, these challenges obviously increase. Many countries in the world are expected to amplify the numbers of people living in poverty, pushing about 150 million people into extreme poverty by 2021. Just think about these numbers. On top of it, and then I will move on, we know from FAO's State of the World's Biodiversity for Food and Agriculture report and the Global Assessment of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services from the World Biodiversity Council, IPBES, that biodiversity and ecosystem services we depend on are significantly threatened. According to the reports, more than 1 million species are at risk of extinction. And why I'm saying all this, as a representative here for the FAO, we really need a transformative action to drive the global transition towards more sustainable, inclusive, and equitable food systems, which again present the biggest chunk of the bioeconomy today in most countries of the world. And we need this action to tackle the root causes of environmental degradation, keeping bioeconomy within the planetary boundaries, in order to fight hunger and poverty, and ultimately to create jobs and promote economic growth. We heard it already, I said it before, innovations, bioinnovations such as microbial products, for example, alternative proteins, plastic alternatives, you name it. Yesterday we heard a lot of examples, play a very important role in accelerating this radical transformation. But we really need to monitor its progress. And this is how I come to the third question, Flora, that you were asking. What kind of policy incentives and what kind of policy environment do we need? I think first and foremost, countries need to invest money to monitor the progress of bioeconomy so we can show how it is successful, so we can show the impact that a bioeconomy can have. And I think the East African Bioeconomy Observatory and the new strategy are really key in this regard. Also, I would like to add that policy should really make sure that by innovations, which allow benefits, but also might come with potential risks, need to be carefully scrutinized to make sure that they really do contribute to the SDGs, including job creation and growth, including consideration of youth and women, and not work against it. Another point I would like to make on the policies, and we've heard that from Paulus and also Ben before, international cooperation, international exchange of experiences, south-south, but also triangular, from countries to countries, especially in the regions. And I think Eastern Africa does an excellent job joining so many countries together in a regional strategy is really key. We see it with FAO's project on sustainable bioeconomy guidelines, which is funded by the German Ministry of Food and Agriculture to support countries in the development of circular bioeconomy strategies and action plans, that working together with different countries and being advised by different countries really makes all the difference. Sharing lessons learned, sharing good practices, but also sharing policies and the lessons learned we countries have on these policies is really key. Maybe a last point I would like to make. In 2016, FAO established the International Sustainable Bioeconomy Working Group. It supports knowledge exchange on sustainable and circular bioeconomy. This group has now 35 members. 20 of them are from national ministries and many affiliated universities or research organizations. And it's a platform for international exchange, but also a platform for policy science exchange, which I think is really key to make bioeconomy work. And we'd be very pleased to welcome members from Eastern Africa to this group as well. So I'll stop here. I hope we have a bit more time later to talk. But this is all for me for the introductory statement.
Thank you very much, Anna, and both Anna and Paul. So Paul is coming from the national space of support for innovation and bioeconomy strategies, and Anna from the international space. So how does this really translate for the youth on the ground? Because these are big words, big policies, but if I'm just an individual entrepreneur and I want to make my way or make my space in this area, what do I need to do and how do I go through these challenges? And it's lucky that we have a very enthusiastic and thriving entrepreneur with us. So I'm going to call Ahad to say from his perspective, how do you actually get to access these opportunities and facilities that have been laid out for us? Ahad, over to you. Can you give us your take on this?
Good morning, everybody. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself earlier before. So my name's Ahad Katera, and I'm from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So our company deals with production of, just a minute. So our company deals with production of, we produce crop-specific organic fertilizer products. We're based in Dar es Salaam. Our company name is called Guave Company Limited. And we are part of the bioinnovate program with ICIPE and other partners here in Tanzania. We've been running a 3 years project trying to do a lot of product development work around different fertilizer products by using a number of bio products or bio waste products as well. So my observation and my input in this is that I feel like, so bioeconomy or the bio sector is still not as exciting as other sectors for the youth. If you look at the tech sector that is growing so fast, which I would say it's even currently overfunded in terms of the number of players, the number of initiatives and things like that. So one, it's still not an exciting and interesting sector for the youth. We are all currently in a very global world with quite a lot of social networking. We have WhatsApp groups, and how many of you have actually seen bio products being posted in your WhatsApp groups, which is just, that gives us an indication that the sector is still at an infant stage in terms of young entrepreneurs trying to introduce or come up with new products into the market. So that's one of my observations. Another one is I feel like the discussion around bioeconomy is still quite at high level. That's still at national and regional level. And there hasn't been actors on the ground. There hasn't been actors in the ground that can actually lay down these policies or these new strategies into the market. And I think that may limit the interest and how fast the sector can be interesting for the youth. And not to forget, markets don't wait for policies. Markets don't wait for strategies. If you're not going to distribute something in the market, someone else is going to do it. So the quicker we are, that's the first we can actually reach the market and be able to serve the needs. Otherwise, we'll soon experience products from other countries that are already coming over to take in the market, where we have a room to actually innovate and come up with these products. I think the other intervention around youth participation within the bio sector is that it requires substantial investment in terms of resources, I think, for product development, R&D work. I'll give an example with the Bioinnovate Africa project. It's around, I think for our business, it's about 5 years. We've been trying to do a lot of product development work, and yet the business is not yet profitable. But the amount of investment that has gone into the company, it's close to $1 million in terms of a lot of product development and a lot of partnerships that we've been able to develop on the way, just to make sure that the products that we're trying to develop will later on create a market. However, we do see that potential in the next coming 2 years. But in terms of resources and investment, there hasn't been quite direct funding opportunities or resources. And these not necessarily have to be grants, for example. Even a bank guarantee would definitely be an opportunity for an entrepreneur to explore. The fact that they've got less collateral or have no collateral at all to be able to attract financing. And I think this also jumps in way ahead into investors. So a group of investors, or trying to link investors that already have experience from other countries into the bio sector, that's still what is missing. And most investors find it risky to invest in really new sectors where they don't have experience. Otherwise, if you bring in investors that already have experience in investing in bio products, then it's easily understood, or it's easily to have a good flow when you're actually discussing the issues around investment in terms of the bioeconomy. My last point is perhaps there needs to be a customization of how we need to engage the youth in the bio sector, for example. And I think an interesting question is, what kind of engagement are we talking about? Are we speaking of engaging youth to distribute products that are being produced by XYZ manufacturing company in India or China? Are we speaking of youth that can actually be employed to collect the biomass that's available either in different agricultural areas or in the urban cities? Are we speaking of youth that can start companies that can generate $1 million of revenue in the next 2 to 3 years? So I think it's a different category of youth we're speaking about here. And if we are going to have an approach or strategy around this, it has to be customized to these groups. And yeah, because the sector is technical. It's not super fast growing as other sectors we see. It needs quite resilience to be able to develop a product out of microorganisms, things that are quite not as much stable and things like that. So there's a lot of scientific knowledge that goes around there that needs to be looked upon. Thank you so much. And that's my contribution for now.
Thank you so much, Ahad, for laying out the opportunities, but also the challenges of what it would take to actually engage youth in the sector. Now, you speak about youth very generally, and I know we have our next panelist who is going to look at one category of youth, and that's Barbara. Yeah. Barbara Alupo, are you with us? She'll give us a perspective of one of the vulnerable groups, and that's women. Barbara?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for inviting me into this discussion. I'm humbled. My name is Barbara Luke. I work with World Vision, and World Vision is a child-centered organization that basically looks at issues of health, livelihood, child protection. And my role in World Vision is to ensure that gender and disability is mainstreamed throughout the program. And when I was asked to come and make a presentation, I definitely looked at what is our perspective of gender. I want to share my screen. I don't know whether it's possible. I don't know whether, are you able to see my screen? Hello? Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Does she have sharing rights? Oh, yes, we can see it now.
Ah, no. Just a minute, please. Wow. Can you now see it?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you so much. Throughout my discussion, I'm going to talk about gender. And when we talk about gender, it's very important that we understand what gender is. And basically, gender looks at the relationships between men and women, girls and boys, and this will vary from one society to the other. And when we want to clearly understand what is our impact, what is the impact of bioeconomy on the women, on the girls, it is very important that we do a thorough analysis. We consider a number of researchers that will help us to understand what is the impact of our engagement in relations to women and men. So when we do this, it provides us a very realistic picture of how much we are going to contribute into the lives of women. So many times when you talk about gender, we try to understand where does it come from. Gender basically comes from the Sustainable Development Goal, and basically goal number 5, which talks about gender equality and women empowerment, which help us in shaping what we do, and how we relate with one another. And this particular area is very key if we are to understand the role that women play in providing us with solutions to climate change, solutions to the different innovations that we are providing. And it also helps us in understanding to what extent are we going to increase the incomes and food security at household level. And it also helps us to understand if we are going to talk about health, like Anne mentioned it, issues of malnutrition. We know that women are the gatekeepers and we cannot avoid to talk about them, especially if we want to improve health and nutrition at family level. So all throughout the discussions, we need to understand that who are we talking about? When we are talking about women, it's important that we know that women make over 51% of humanity in the world, and women contribute over 70% of the agricultural production, and they hold over 90% of household water and fuel that benefits directly our households, benefits me and you. And then it's also important to know that even when you talk about the informal sector, women are the majority. Women, for example, in Uganda are 62% and men are 55% of the informal sector, which is rarely talked about in all forums or in most conferences. And when mentioned, it is left there. So when we talk about women in bioeconomy, we realize that women sit at the center because their work rotates around bioeconomy. Their survival is basically in there. So when we talk about gender, when we talk about women, it is very important that we understand from what perspective are we addressing some of these gender concerns. It is important that we look at, for example, the gender roles and responsibilities. When we are talking about bioeconomy, we're talking about, for example, the production chain. It's important that we know who does what. Is it the man who does it? Is it the woman who does it? Because when we understand who does these different activities, then we are going to understand how we can be able to package. If you're talking about any technology, for example, you're talking about pesticides, who is going to apply these pesticides? For example, is it going to be the man? Is it going to be the woman? Then at the level of harvesting of crops, for example, who is going to harvest? Because a lot of wastage occurs at the level of harvest, at the level of management, which is basically what women do. And then it's also very important that we understand if we are going to package any technology, if we are going to plan of any innovations, we need to know who has these resources. Are these resources owned by the men? Are they owned by the women? If they are owned by the men, then chances high that in most of our interventions, we'll be targeting the men and we forget the women. Bearing in mind that when you talk about productive resources and we talk about agriculture, we are basically talking about land. And many of us will bear witness that land in Africa is basically customary in nature, and it is passed on from one person to another, generally from a father to a son. Then when you talk about the beliefs, when you talk about the perceptions, how are these perceptions going to affect the different innovations that you're going to implement? For example, if you are talking about a particular byproduct, what does that byproduct mean to a woman? What does it mean to a man? Because most of our beliefs, our abilities to take on any particular innovation is based on what we think. It's based on how we have been brought up. It's based on what we think can benefit us. So most of these beliefs are basically centered on our culture. If our culture believes that a particular technology will benefit a particular group, then chances high that they will take it on. But if they do not believe in it, then it will remain in paper. Then it is also very important that when we are packaging, for example, now we are developing our strategies. Number of countries are still working on the bioeconomic strategy. It is very important that we also understand what will be the needs of women, what will be their priorities. If any intervention is coming on board, what is it that this intervention is bringing on board for women? What is it bringing on board for men? Because when we understand the priorities, then chances high that it will be taken on. Then very key is the aspect of power. Power prevents and informs us on most of the things. Who has the power? Who makes the decisions? If anything is coming and getting down to a household, who has the power on when and how this intervention will be taken on? Who has the power to decide, for example, in regards to acreage? If you're talking about commercial agriculture, and you're talking that we need to promote commercial agriculture to benefit, who has the power to decide on how much land? And if you talk about Uganda, for example, it is the men who have the power. So even if you come to target the women and forget the men, chances high that you will not be able to get on into a particular household. Then we look at the institutions, we look at the laws, we look at the policies that we are talking about. What do these laws mean for a woman, for a rural woman? What do these laws mean for a man? You realize that most of the laws are still bent are still gender biased. Some of them are still gender blind. When you talk about, for example, I want to give an example of the market-oriented laws. Most of them are laws that are meant to promote productivity. But what does this productivity mean to a woman? What does it mean to a man? So if we do not look into some of these issues, chances high that we are going to leave a particular sector of our community, of our nations left behind, and we'll be able to move with others. I just looked at a few things. What opportunities are there for us to tap, for example, as women? We need to understand that issues of gender inequality and pervasive gender norms mean a lot. They can mean that we are going to promote a particular sector. It can mean that a particular sector or a particular sector is going to be left behind. So therefore, it is very key that throughout our interventions, we mainstream gender. We mainstream gender right from the time when we are developing. If it is a research, what does that research mean to a woman? Right from the time when you have the idea, bring in the implication of that idea onto the life of a woman, onto the life of a man. So we would recommend that if one took on a twin track approach, an approach that looks at the woman and looks at the product that you're bringing on board and integrating both of them, then we are likely to benefit both the men and the women. So in whatever intervention, talk about the technology, every technology, as long as it is being developed for human consumption, has implications to the livelihood of either a man or a woman. So meaning that we cannot avoid talk about gender, we cannot avoid talk about women if we are planning to package any product for them. So I want to give just an example of what World Vision is doing. And I'm giving an example of a humanitarian setting where we all know that when disaster strikes, it tends to manifest or affect both men and women differently. I give an example of brick making or briquettes. And briquettes are basically made to help us solve some of the challenges that are related to firewood. Now, when we make briquettes are made from organic wastes. It can be like rice husks, granite shells, or name it. These are used to make briquettes. Now, when you make the briquette, the briquettes will not only protect the environment. The briquettes will also address some of the gender concerns that women are likely to face if they are faced in a humanitarian setting. For example, yes.
Barbara, and sorry
Yes.
to interject, but I just want to say that we're running a little bit over time. I want to ask, would it be possible that you can also share your presentation so that we can share it with the participants, and then we can allow questions so that probably some of the points that you want to address can come through the questions? Is that possible? Or so I give you a minute to make the concluding remarks, if possible.
Perfect. Just a minute. Thank you so much. All I'm trying to say that it is very important that we identify the gender issues within any implementation plan or strategies, and deliberately focus on addressing some of the issues that some of the sectors that are likely to be left behind, and that is basically the women. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've had an understanding so far from the panelists, a little bit of insight into what is being done at national, international, at the ground root level. And now we're going to close off our panelists with somebody who's going to give us a global perspective, and that's Dr. Fahmy, who's from UNESCO. Will give us his thoughts from UNESCO on the topic of today. Dr. Fahmy, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity and for the organizers for inviting UNESCO to take part. I'm very quickly speak about capacity building of Africa's youth for the bioeconomy, as this was kind of the idea of this session, and trying to adapt my, let's say, my presentation to it. Do I say next, or do I do, yeah, next. So just very quickly, as you probably all know, UNESCO is an intergovernmental organization, and it's basically is a neutral broker with convening powers. For the last 2 decades, Africa and gender has been the organization priority. So a lot of our programs and activities are for service of Africa. And maybe I can move this. I saw something that I can move, yeah. And as I say, for the last 2 decades, we have been working a lot with the African Union. I just put this slide just to show that when Africa established this consolidated plan of action, which was basically the blueprint for the Agenda 2063 that came later, there was very strong and very active involvement of life sciences across the continent. And this was in the establishment of bioscience networks in the east, like BecaNet, in the south, in the west, and in the north. You know, in 2008, I recall that we worked with the government of Kenya to organize the first ever All Africa Congress on Biotechnology. And the same year, we worked with the World Bank and the World Health Organization to put together the Global Ministerial Forum on Research for Health that resulted in the Bamako Action Plan. So there was very strong and very active involvement of a lot of African networks and stakeholders in building the biotech sector. So I think it's very interesting to see now Africa moving into the you know, in the arena of the bioeconomy. We heard in the yesterday and today as well that this is more of a kind of not a specific sector, but a kind of a multidisciplinary type of engagement or sector involving all sorts of, you know, agriculture, industry, health, and so on. I lost my, yes, there it is. Can I move my stuff myself, or do you have to move it for me? Okay. So the question that we posed was how to attract Africa's youth to building a sustainable bioeconomy. And so we don't have a kind of a recipe per se for the bioeconomy, because as we said earlier, this is a kind of a multi-sectorial type of initiative. but we can take cue or take, how do you say, look at lesson learned from other disciplines. And I can tell you that in most of most of the disciplines that we looked at UNESCO, there are four major things that needs to be put in place, or policy incentive that needs to be put in place to attract Africa's youth to the bus. Well, the first one is we need to improve and harmonize what we call interdisciplinary education. Things that are taught are not actually taught in universities as we see. Maybe in, let's say, in the rich economies, this is something that is being implemented. But if you look at middle income or low income economies, interdisciplinary education curricula at, let's say, the higher education level or university level is not so strong. And the question that this interdisciplinary education curricula also needs to have some sort of a crosstalk with the industry. The second thing is we need to facilitate the development of innovation ecosystem. Ben mentioned this very clearly in his intervention. That innovation, we need to build this innovation, and this is not a one-way street, but it involves the whole community. The third thing, and Ahad, I think, mentioned this also in his intervention, the upgrading of research infrastructures in laboratories, in universities. This is, of course, we all know that universities in Africa lack this basic infrastructure for doing research. But this doesn't only need to be done through financing, from government or from foreign aid, but it can also be done through research networks and partnerships. And the fourth thing is the capacity enhancement for on safety of biotechnology research. In my earlier slide, I mentioned, I perhaps forgot to talk about, the biosafety network that was also established by the African Union. And we all know that in order for biotech or biosector type of research to be done, these, the Cartenia protocol for biosafety needs to be implemented. And although most countries in Africa are signatory to this protocol, very few actually have produced national, sort of biosafety protocols for their universities to practice this bios research. Next. So the main issue is, as I said, is education and interdisciplinary education. And so for that, we need to diversify the learning qualification. We need to diversify how learning is done at universities. We also have to look at the teachers and the profile of teachers or lecturers, how we can enhance that through in-service training, through the, what we call the STEM teacher profile, and also about we only look at the young people who are entering universities, but people who may have not, for one or the other reason, decided to get into a higher education and started working, but then wanted to return back to work in university. So this kind of upskilling or reskilling, or what we call lifelong learning courses, need to also be integrated, for those who want to come back. People working in business, in industry, may want to upskill or reskill their knowledge. And the issue that we have to also work very closely with the industry is very important, that these courses need to reflect industrial and also social needs. So as I said, we should not only look at the academic side of university, but also people who are working in vocational let's say centers, how to reskill and upskill. Next. So the bioeconomy could, this slide was done not necessarily for the bioeconomy, but for generally, work in the biosector or bioinnovation. And I think it could capture as well this work of the bioeconomy in terms of education and skills. And this shows that bioeconomy, whether it's in agriculture or with health, requires this confluence of different disciplines. Physics, chemistry, the basic sciences are important, but also engineering. We increasingly hear about bioengineering, and the confluence between life sciences and engineering needs to be integrated into this interdisciplinary courses. And of course, how to become entrepreneurs. We need to integrate also business studies and economics into these courses. Next. So this is a very quick slide of what perhaps could be modalities of creating these education program, multidisciplinary master and doctoral programs in these various areas. As you can see, not only the science, but also, the regulatory affairs, the intellectual property right, policy and ethics. I think the colleague from FIO mentioned this also, that we need to be cognizant that bio-innovation are not always, for benefit of, there's also the negative side, and we have to also integrate the ethical studies in this. There's also the issue of mentorship, mentorshiping of the young, because they don't really know what to do after they do their degree. So there is a lot, needs to integrate a strong program of mentorship and mobility of young researchers around Africa, around the world. Of course, also the short-term and long-term kind of trainings are important for domain-specific subjects that university can offer. Next. I mentioned also in my earlier slide the need for innovation ecosystem, and we know that building an innovation ecosystem involves not only the formal sector, whether it's government, but also non-governmental organization and the informal sector, who are the grassroots inventors, the farmers, the local and indigenous knowledge practitioners. So, this innovation has to integrate all of these actors. In UNESCO, we have been in the business of the creation of science parks and biotech parks and biotech business incubators in a number of countries, including Africa. I think in Africa, there were about 7 countries that looked at UNESCO to assist them in establishing these biotech parks. We do this with the association, with the partnership of the World Technopolis Association. And, this would be very interesting kind of model where these biotech parks can work with universities to co-design curriculum for the youth. Next. So, and then here, this penultimate slide, I think, is we need to also create centers of excellence. UNESCO has been really in the business of doing this for a long time. And this is basically bringing the triad together, research, education, and training together and under one roof. Usually this is the job of universities, but we know that universities are always overloaded. There's a certain bureaucracy that is always difficult to get through. So there is this model of creation of centers of excellence that can sort of get away from this bureaucracy and give more freedom for the researchers, for the principal investigators to work. As I mentioned, research infrastructure does not only happen through aid, foreign aid, or governments or banks giving money, but through partnerships and networks. And these are some of the examples I just mentioned here. For example, the Green Chemistry for Life. This is a very interesting program that we are doing with Fosagro, which is the biggest phosphate fertilizer in the world, in the Russian Federation. And we are working with the International Union for Pure and Applied Chemistry to provide fellowships for research in green chemistry. What are the kind of new paradigms in green chemistry all around the world that is serving, giving back to society. We'll work with pharmaceutical industry, such as Merck, to train a lot of African researchers. We also have our normative instruments, our report, the science report, the Global Ocean Science Report. And, I want to mention here very quickly that last year or the year before, Kenya organized the first conference on the blue economy, which is very important because, we should not also forget that almost 34 countries of African countries are coastal countries. So there is this resource, the sea, with all the, the bio innovation that can happen by prospecting the sea. Next. Yes. I just just previously 2 examples and I finish. We have to think of the environment and how bioeconomy influences the environment. And I put this slide here, which is basically Africa's biosphere reserves. These are basically national parks created across the world. And in Africa, we have 79 biosphere reserves in 29 countries. 3 of them are transboundary sites. And you can just see the data. There's about 20 million people living in these sites in Africa. And they are all involved in indigenous knowledge production, in conservation, and in trying to kind of improving their livelihood. So we talk about the bioeconomy not only at the high end of research, but also of, let's say, the low end of research, how to add value to certain products that improve livelihood of these people. And finally, my last slide, I want to say that bioeconomy, as we were earlier said, is really like an umbrella, if you like, and it includes energy, it includes as I said, the blue economy. So we need to think out of the box all the time and engage with other sectors. I mean, I put this slide, for example, engineering. We have this very interesting initiative called the Africa Engineering Week. Every year, over more than 20,000 engineers, confluence in one country to share their knowledge and experience. And every year we have a theme. Perhaps one could think of bioengineering as a theme for organizing this engineering week. So I leave it with this. I hope I didn't take a lot of your time. And I'm here for questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask us all to appreciate, and I want to appreciate all the panelists who have spoken this morning. It has been very, very insightful. There's a lot of information to take in from a lot of different aspects, but as Ben pointed out correctly, bioeconomy is very complex. It has a lot of nuances to it. We have a couple of questions, and I'm going to just take the ones that are in the chat. You can continue to populate the chat. I'll give the first question to you, Ben. It's from Kebede, and he is asking if you have any tips on bio-based service like waste utilization for food security and health. Ben?
Great, can you hear me?
If you can make it very short, yeah. If you can, so
yes,
we have,
sure.
yeah, we don't have that much time.
Obviously, there's a strategy and there are a range of initiatives that look at this, and you can buy many things off the shelf, as it were. But what really is needed is the drive, the entrepreneurial drive and the regulatory permission. What we have in South Africa is a company called AgriProtein, which is using food waste to produce fertilizer, using fly larvae as the medium to get it into the fertilizer. Enormously successful, growing rapidly and expanding out of South Africa as we talk. So that's a food security issue. In the health side, it obviously improves the quality of food being produced and therefore does contribute to health. But there are a broad range of initiatives that need to be encouraged. And bottom line, and I think Ahmed mentioned this, it's not just government that must be doing this. Government must enable and create the ecosystem, but it is everyone that must participate, and it can't all be controlled and funded and steered by government. It must be this broader collective effort.
Thank you, Ben. The next question was again for you. How do you segment the South African bioeconomy, and how much of it is actually a result of genetic engineering apart from energy? Yes, I can.
Would be surprising not to hear the word genetic engineering or genetic modification in a bioeconomy discussion.
Especially for South Africa.
Especially for South Africa. But everyone is probably aware that agriculture forms a small portion of our GDP. It varies, I said, between 2 and 4%. And most of our maize, most of our cotton, and most of our soya is genetically modified. And this undoubtedly has a very positive impact on our productivity in those particular industries. So definitely it has had a positive role to play, but as I said in my talk, our bioeconomy is 8%. It's much bigger than just the contribution of maize, soya, and cotton. And so it's one element in a highly complex system. And yes, it has contributed, but it's certainly by no means the only factor that leads to our development.
Ben, while you're still on speaking, and then I'll move to another panelist, how do you measure the contribution of the bioeconomy to your GDP?
So
how do you do the metrics?
Yes, this has been a very interesting exercise. We've got our National Advisory Council on Innovation, which put together a team of experts, statisticians, economists, and so on, that came up with the methodology. And we collect through our Stats South Africa institution various stats. And what was required then was to sift through those, the various standard industry codes, to identify which ones were bioeconomy and which ones were not, and put all that data together in order to come up with it. We haven't yet published this data, but within the next couple of months, I imagine it will be published, and we will provide some methodology, but happy to engage with people that would like to measure their bioeconomy further.
Thank you very much. I think we'll be reaching out. All the countries need to understand measuring metrics for anything with regard to science, technology, innovation, and bioeconomy. Even it's really a complex quantification that needs to be done. I'll move over to Ahmed. Ahmed, a couple of comments, but I think you might just want to speak further to it. The comments were with regards to vocational training, industrial placements, and mentorship. How important are these? The comments are that this is really important, but what does UNESCO do to actually make sure that this happens, and what kind of programs are available that we can push these in our economies? Can you speak to that a little bit?
I can mention, you probably know about this. We have a very highly visible program called the UNESCO L'Oreal Award for Women in Research.
Excellent. And, I was hoping you would mention that one.
For all the women here, I think you're all, potential candidates for the next round.
It has an eligibility criteria. Just make sure you have to.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the eligibility, but a lot of these women, one of the, let's say, terms of reference for this program is for these women to go, funded by the L'Oreal Foundation, to go and give lectures and master classes in their research to many young girls, aspiring girls across the world, and has been very successful in galvanizing, this, women for science and science for women. So this is an example, a very interesting example that could be replicated about in terms of mentorship programs. Also there is, we work a lot with our, what we call UNESCO chairs. We have over 800 UNESCO chairs around the world in various different disciplines. And their job is actually to also advise students about their careers, what they can do next, what are the options. If they don't want to go to academia, that's okay, We shouldn't consider them as failures. Instead, we should, maybe take those who have done science, let's say, at high school, and say, yes, maybe you could work in a bank, you can work and take the science and show that it's very important in the way to analyze things and so on. So we have a lot of this program done through our UNESCO chairs. This mentorship program is, I think I saw a comment as well, is not only for the aspiring students or people in universities. I saw a very interesting comment from that say this mentoring could also be done for our politicians, for our people in, and this is very important. Because we often don't understand sometimes how governments work, because we are not in the government. and they have their own limitations and challenges and bureaucracies and so on. So, and the same way governments, when they make legislations, they don't necessarily know what working in the laboratory means and what are the challenges. And, I need to buy certain consumables and equipment and I have no money and so on. So, there is a bit of decoupling, they don't understand each other. So we need to have this more, crosstalk. And I want to mention a program that unfortunately is discontinued, but was very successful in the past, where UNESCO worked with parliamentarians and standing committees in parliament to educate them about what is science and technology research. And part of this program was actually to force one parliamentarian, a parliamentarian to spend 2 to 3 days shadowing a researcher in a laboratory to see what is the problems. And this researcher will spend 2 to 3 days in the parliament to see how legislations are made, what are the challenges, why are we, there was always a bottlenecks in moving things. So, to improve this kind of understanding between these two. And, this was a very interesting program. Hopefully it could be revitalized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. So I'm going to pull in, thank you very much, Ahmed. I was saying I'm going to pull in someone who is going to give you some insight into a follow-on opportunity to discuss youth initiatives in bioeconomy. And this is Maysoon. Maysoon, are you on the call? I'll give him a few minutes just to explain what they're doing with galvanized youth around the world to set up a youth platform that will discuss further the initiatives that you can do. Yes, there you go. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, yes. So we're part of the Youth Bioeconomy Summit, and we'll be making workshops as well as a mind map showing how youth are going to be taking a role into bioeconomy. And we'll be having our seminar on the 19th of November, and we're made up of a combination of people from the ages of I'm 17, and we have people who are postgraduates as well. And we just want to kind of introduce youth from all around the world. We're all from different continents about how youth can really introduce themselves to a concept that is foreign to them, for example, and things like that. And I'm also joined with my partner who will be continuing and talking about it.
Do I answer?
Yes, please. No, Tokelo?
Hi, hi everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share our insights on the workshop. So this will be happening at the Global Bioeconomy Summit on the 19th of November, and will essentially be holding a space for young people to engage on the bioeconomy and going through a road mapping exercise to identify how we can take more action as young people and also identify who else can be involved. I think it's quite important from hearing the conversation today that it's really important as young people and everyone, all the players, to co-design the future of the bioeconomy together. And this will be the space for us to do that. So please look out on the Global Bioeconomy Summit Twitter page. This is where we'll be sharing the link to the workshop, and we look forward to having everyone there and sharing insights on this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Tokelo and Maysoon, at least. So now we know that this conversation will not end today. It will continue, and please participate in the workshop, give the youth a bit more inspiration, give them the opportunities that we've laid out, at least those of us who've laid it out today. I'm going to ask each panelist to take 1 minute and no less, 30 seconds actually, if you can, just so that we can wrap up the session with a few of your final thoughts. What are your recommendations? What should we do after this? And then, yeah. So we'll start with Paulus.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, bioeconomy should not stop today. It should be a continuous process, more engagement and collaborative. This is only what we know how it will transform societies. I think that's from me.
Thank you, Paulus. Anne?
Thank you, Chair. Just saw the question from Ben saying yesterday somebody high up said agriculture is not attractive. How do we get youth back to agriculture? How do we get them to work for bioeconomy? And I think bioeconomy as such and bioinnovations is such a sexy and attractive topic. It should happen, but it's not going to happen automatically. And this is what we heard here from, I think, all the speakers. We need to educate them. We need to invest in education. We need to invest in starting from elementary school all the way to higher education. And we need to bring in the farming sector. These two sectors together can really give a push to bioeconomy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really important to bring in the agriculture. Ahad, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Parting
just a
shots.
quick one. Yeah, I think youth is the hope for the future generation. So let's bring them on board. The earlier is the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, can I call on you?
Thank
Barbara?
you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Bioeconomy cannot be separated from women. We can only work by investing on eliminating barriers that affect participation of women. And through that, we'll be able to achieve greater results. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed, parting shots?
Yeah, I want to second what Barbara just said and the rest. Youth and women, in order for us to attract them to the bioeconomy, we have to involve them in it. They have to feel that they are major stakeholders. Otherwise, you know, it won't work.
Absolutely. Ben, do you have any parting advice for us? Thank you for sharing the documents, and I see also Marta has shared some lessons from FAO. It's really great to have the chat for sharing all this information.
Great. My parting point is really we must recognize that this is a collective effort. Ahad said that government has a role to play, but it is not the only driver, and we can't wait for things. What government has to do is catalyze things, but it can't control everything. And we need to recognize this as a collective effort, and we should be reaching out to stakeholders, whether they are farmers, whether they are women, whether they are industry, in order to make this work more effective. Thanks very much, and well done, Flora.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for mentioning my name, because I did not introduce myself. I was going to do that at the end because I'm the least important person here. I'm Flora. I work in Southern Africa, trying to support building robust innovation ecosystems. So great to have chaired this session this morning. Hope you all have a great day further and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, Flora.
Bye. Have a good afternoon.